We'll move into smoky peated whiskies just now. And we start with a whiskey most people will call Laing, but that's not really the way you pronounce it. You either pronounce it, or the ways I've heard was Lecek or Ledek. Probably depends who you're talking to, which region he's from, and how much he's been drinking. Lecek is the peated version from Tobermory Distillery, and Tobermory is on the Isle of Mull. And generally, they're kind of medium peated. But this whiskey has then put on a sherry butt for its full lifetime as well. So here we've got a combination of a medium peated whiskey matured on a sherry cask, will give a rich, spicy character. And when I received this sample in the office, the moment I opened the bottle, it was smoky bacon crisps, kind of like a bag of chips, opening it up with that real traditionally chimney smoked ham coming through. So you've got that salty character, the smoke coming through as well. And that same day, I also had some visitors in the office for tasting, and I passed around the bottle. What they picked up was burnt rubber. And you'll get that style a bit as well. Now, the thing about smoky whiskies is that some people love it. The smokier, the better. At the same time, you've got some people that completely hate it. And I remember a tasting actually in Germany, near Berlin. And at the end of the tasting, we had Lefroy coming through. And there was a couple in the audience, and the husband loved it. He loved the really smoky whiskey, while his wife just poured her dram in his glass and said, "Darling, I might as well pour schnapps in an ashtray and drink that." I still don't like it, but it'll be much less expensive. Now, when I'm saying the husband enjoys the peated whiskey, the wife, she wasn't a big fan. A lot of people kind of become quite sexist on their whiskey. Oh, this is a real man's whiskey, while the Glenort is a woman's whiskey. Let's have a little taste. See how that combination of peat and sherry works. Now, you immediately have that smokiness coming through. Still salty, but now you've got this hint of licorice, salty licorice. Now, for me, licorice is licorice. I know there's sweet licorice, there's salty licorice. I'm not a big fan. If you start talking about licorice in Sweden, you'll have this whole discussion, what brand of licorice do we taste in this whiskey? And that's just all over my head. But like they're big fans of peated whiskey, they're also big fans of licorice. Now, talking about peat, kind of the fetish of lovers of smoked whiskey is ppm, the phenols, parts per millions in a whiskey. And a lot of distilleries play with that number. If you're talking Islay whiskies, Bowmore will be about 20 ppm. Bruichladdich will be 0 to 5 ppm. But an Ardbeg will be 45, 50 ppm. And then you've got kind of the freaks of smokiness, the Octomore or the Ardbeg Supernova, and you're talking 80 ppm, 150 ppm. But what they're actually talking about is a smokiness in the malted barley. That's what they've measured. Now, when you are actually distilling, when does the smoke, when do the phenols come through? It's actually in your foreshots and your faints. During your spirit run, they're too heavy to come through. So most of the time, that really strong smokiness that you might expect from such a malt, you're not able to get that in the spirit, but it's just kind of a marketing number to be used. Now, on that note, we can go to Islay, actually, and not really, but to an Islay whiskey. And we're continuing with a Bowmore. Bowmore kind of shows how much distilling is kind of mixed with the local culture and the local population. For example, waste heat from the distillery at Bowmore Distillery is used to heat up the local swimming pool. It's not filled with whiskey. And the question we had earlier on the break was, why is this Bowmore different from a Bowmore from the distillery, an original Bowmore? Now, at the distillery, they will vat together hundreds of casks to always get the same flavor and character. And that's actually very difficult to have that continuity. And I want to make sure that if you buy a Bowmore 18, for example, today, or you buy it in 4 or 5 years' time, that you'll have the same experience, the same flavor, the same character. We, on the other hand, we try different samples of our casks, and then we say, right, this is a really good one. Let's bottle this one cask, which is great because it gives you a lot of diversity. We're not looking to make something similar that Bowmore bottles. We want to be as different and as interesting as possible. Small disadvantage with that is that this gives us only 312 bottles worldwide. Let's have a little taste. The smoking is quite subtle on the nose, and to be honest, I've got a bad nose for peat. I sometimes don't pick it up on the nose. I pick it more up on the palate. Because sometimes when you're at a higher strength, we're back at 48.4%, you get the freshness, the fruitiness first from the alcohol that evaporates before you add your more heavier, oilier elements that evaporate later. You get a nice leathery hint coming through, kind of with black shoe polish. And I remember an advert from the chain of whiskey shops called the Whiskey Shop in the UK, and they showed a black polished leather shoe, and somebody poured vanilla custard on it to show you how strange whiskey or what combinations of flavor you might find in a dram of whiskey. Got a bit of that fireplace that when you walk into your living room and the fire's been on, but it didn't go out completely, and just some smoke hangs in the living room. And that aroma comes to mind. Not so much that seaweedy style, more linked to an Ardbeg or Lafroig, more of a dry smoked and sweetness. On the palate, you have more of that honeyed sweetness at first. Quite light, quite fresh. And then slowly that smokiness builds up, becomes richer and richer. Then you get that tar. Not that you would eat tar, but if you're driving past roadworks and you inhale the tar, kind of that aroma now lingers on your palate. Another distillery that a lot of people have difficulty pronouncing the name. I also think that when local people decided to name their distillery, that were playing Scrabble and right, I've got these letters here, and I want to make lots of points. Bunnahabhain, yeah, that's the name of a distillery. Or Craigellachie, which when you've got Americans asking for the road to Craigellachie, they ask for Craigellachie. Kalila, a lot of people pronounce it Cole Isla, because it's on Isla, but Isla is just pronounced Isla. And beautiful place next to the sea, the big windows at the stills, overseeing the Sound of Isla between Isla and Jura. The whiskey is produced there, but all the spirit is just filled in a tanker and then shipped to the mainland where it's filled into casks. So nothing of Kalila whiskey touches wood on Isla. Now you're thinking, oh, but then you don't have that influence of the island. Now, a lot of people think, oh, the environment plays a big influence on the whiskey. If you mature whiskey in Taiwan, lovely distillery, Kavalan, lovely whiskey, but they won't mature their whiskey for 20 years because then there would be nothing left in the cask. Because of the heat, you lose between 10–15% per year of the volume. Scotland, during the maturation, you lose about 1.5% to 2%. It's nice and damp, it's not too hot, so you kind of have a slow maturation. It's like making a stew. One makes it in a microwave, another one sets it for 5 hours on a big pot, and then you just get, even though you've got the same ingredients, you just get a different style of end product. Same thing in Scotland. It needs a time to mature. Now the nose for me is like waking up after camping on the beach, and you've got your bonfire next to your tent, and you just have the smoldering ashes. Bit heavier on the smoke here. That salty sea breeze. And something that we do more and more often nowadays is do whiskey and food pairings. Either find food to go parallel with the whiskey. This would be quite nice with some smoked eel, smoked mackerel, or find contrasting flavors. Kind of have something peaty with something very sweet. The problem when you do whiskey and food pairings is that a lot of people still want to have wine with their food. And once you start combining wine and whiskey, things go total loss. It doesn't work. And we've got a saying, you don't mix the grain and the grape. So you can have beer in the afternoon, have a couple of whiskeys, it's okay. But if you have wine and then whiskey, it clashes, and you'll wake up with a massive hangover. I've got an extra dram being poured. And this is our friend from Islay called Big Pete. And Big Pete is actually a play of words on peat, the peat you use to smoke the malted barley and to dry the malted barley, but also a person, Peter. We didn't want to put a single malt in there. We wanted to create something with different styles of smokiness and peatiness combined together, so we could have bigger volumes as well. Because in some countries, unfortunately, it's quite difficult to release these single cask, single malt whiskies. And Fred and I experimented with different whiskies and in different proportions. And we ended up with a vetting of Ardbeg, Kalila, Bowmore, a bit of Port Ellen, and 2 other malts from Islay, which unfortunately we cannot tell you. Bottled at 46%, unchill filtered, natural color. That's your standard Big Peat. Now what I have in Big Peat generally is kind of a salty sweetness and a burnt character. What I compare it to is breakfast on a Sunday after a good Saturday night out. You wake up really early, around lunchtime. You're quite hungry. But you don't have much to eat at home. So you get some bread, you toast it, and typical thing with a toaster, it pops out, not cooked enough. So you put it back in, you turn your back, 2 black slices come out. And it turns out those were your 2 last slices of bread. So you scrape off the burnt bits, put on some salted butter and some honey. And that's what you get in Big Peat. You've got that sweetness, you've got that saltiness, you've got the butteriness, and then the burnt toast coming through. Now, I would like to thank everybody for organizing this tasting. I would also like to thank you for coming out on a Monday night. I know you probably have to get up in the morning and go to work. And I wouldn't like to do that after drinking 7 different whiskies. So thank you for coming, and I'd like to drink to your health. Slanjava. Cheers. Thank you. Cheers.
Ja, stik op maar.